My name is Frankie Mendoza, and I do animation from pre-production to post, and recently been seeing a career shift from post-production on shows like Archer and Adult Swim's Jellies and Tigtone to now concept development and pre-production. That's what I kind of do.
I'm Maffett. I'm a illustrator and graphic designer. I draw comics. I love comics. I have a passion for comics. My project's called The Soul of the Hero. It's a 1970s exploitation action with a superhero twist. So I've been drawing comics since I could hold a pencil. I also went back as a hobby, went back to art school to become a better illustrator, and in turn started picking up clients and just doing a lot of just different indie projects.
My name is Lamont Russ. I have been doing 2D animation all the way up to concept design since about 2007, and I work in the games and film and television industry doing that.
And my name is Dwight Clark. My name is Dwight Clark. I'm an illustrator, graphic designer. I do currently working on doing VR integration into comics and visual illustration.
Can you introduce yourself, Mr. Mcgee?
My name is Brian Mcgee. I'm a storyboard artist and illustrator and the co-founder of the Atlanta Creators.
I want to say thank you guys for coming on today. What inspired you guys to want to work in film? Were you guys always wanting to begin drawing, and then I was just like, I want to see this in, let's say, a video game on television, or were you just having a natural gift in drawing arts?
I'll take that.
So as a kid, my dad was a high school art teacher, and so I've always had pencils and paints and clay and all that kind of stuff in my hands. Does that sound better? Okay, sorry. So I've always been drawing, painting, playing with clay, whatnot, and when I got old enough, it was like, great, what am I going to do after high school? Because I wasn't paying attention, I was sitting in the back of the class drawing. And so I realized people will pay me to draw. And I was a huge Disney fan, as well as Warner Brothers, any cartoons. And I was like, wow, I can learn to make that. And so I was able to find an opportunity to apprentice under an animator, and kind of made my way into the industry that way. And just everything that I kind of get my hands on, I'm like, animation led to video games. Because I was playing video games, I was like, well, that's just animation in a different form. And so I've just rolled it that way.
I started off just reading comics as a kid. My dad introduced me to Spider-Man, and I loved it. And I used to trace him, and then he used to say, why are you tracing? You should draw it. And my dad, took the tracing paper away, and I started to draw it, and I realized, wow, I could actually draw this stuff. Then I had a high school friend, or not, actually elementary school friend, his name is Chip, and Chip used to draw his own comics. And I was like, we can actually draw our own? So I started drawing my own, and it just continued on and continued on. I wanted to work for one of the big production companies in doing it, but then I found when I went to art school that a lot of my colleagues weren't employed. And that doesn't agree with my paycheck and my lifestyle. So I found, and I was constantly seeking clients and constantly trying to find more work and having doors shut, having doors open. But then when I realized I'm doing this for fun, I want to tell the story I want to tell. It started, the heavens opened up and the stress dropped, and even more clients came because now I was able to say no. And for some reasons, when you tell people to say no, they want you to say yes, so they start seeking you. And then I started really just putting all my effort into chasing my own dream instead of chasing someone else's. And when I chased my own dream, I found my calling. And I realized now, my story might not, my dream or my project might not be the story you want to hear, but it's the one that I'm going to tell. And people can pick up on that energy, and then start to want to listen. So that's my motivation.
A animation and illustration comes more so when you do concept development versus graphic and visual arts? Like, excuse me, graphic design rather? Or just anybody?
Oh, wait, say that again?
Would you
I'm sorry.
say that when you are doing animation and illustration, is that more in like pre-production concept development, or is that more heavy in graphic design or post-production?
Thank you.
Right.
Both of them. I think in our field, it depends on what your strongest passion is for. So all those things that you named, they have people that are really passionate about the graphic design, or really passionate about storyboards, or really passionate about animating or character design. Like, it breaks down into different sections, and there are some of us that can do multiple of those things. We can do graphic design, we can do characters, we can do story, we can do all of that. But there's usually one thing that we are really strong on, that we shine in, that kind of like our clients, whoever hires us, and they, this is really good, I want to put you in this position. So technically, we usually fall somewhere between pre-production or post-production with the type of work that we do. But for us, it honestly, like, that does not matter which category that they put us in. To us, what matters is how strong our work is when we're in that category. So that doesn't even really matter to us which category that they put us in. It's just like, yeah, just put me in this category, I'm gonna get it done. Don't worry about it.
Right. Is creating content such as like drawing out visuals and storyboarding, does that differ within animation rather than sports and entertainment?
Yes, storyboarding is primarily for plotting out shots that are pre-planned. And so sports doesn't really play into that. Everything in sports happens, while the camera's running. The storyboards are a blueprint for the director to follow. They're used for keeping everybody who are working on one production, keeping everyone on the same page. So I might get a job for a storyboard job, which for a scene that requires a specific stunt or a specific type of special effect, and each department within a production has to go and get a budget for whatever stunt or whatever special effect is required. So without seeing it, just reading it from the script, they are not able to figure out, or they're not able to visualize in their head what's exactly going to happen, or what's required, what kind of camera is going to be needed on that day, what kind of stunt is going to be done on that day. And storyboard saves millions of dollars. They let you know how long these cameras are going to be required, how long that stunt person is going to be required, what kind of visual effects you're going to have to have a budget for. So it's always about pre-planning. So yes, sports doesn't really come into that.
Okay, because I know like some directors may feel as though they can do the storyboard, that they can go ahead and, because it's their vision, they can do it without a storyboard artist or somebody creating that concept. What's your take on that?
Hitchcock, did his own. Ridley Scott is another one.
James Cameron. Yeah, these guys are close enough of visionaries to where like they can draw stick figures on a napkin to us, and as long as their communication is between us and the director, it doesn't matter how horrible it looks. We understand it. We read from the same type of book that has to do with directing and storytelling and everything. So we know certain terms, certain words. We like pick up on it just like that, and it all depends again on the director themselves, how much knowledge they have about art and their vision and everything like that. Some of them they need to see completely detailed things. Some of them you can put a stick figure in there, you can put a photograph of some random person from a stock image. It doesn't matter to them. It depends on how the director wants to.
By the way, every director that I've ever worked with that gives me a stick figure or tries to visually explain his concept to me, it's always really helpful, but they all say the same thing. Well, I'm not an artist, but they always do that. So
Yeah.
I don't know. This is great because it's visual communication. So if anybody can tell me what their idea is with more than just words, because words are a little clumsy, if you can just show me exactly what you want, and that's always going to help the process flow a little bit more smoothly.
Okay. Now, when you create I guess in the pre-production stage and the creative concept of developing what it is the director is looking for, how do you see when the actual project's produced, your project, like your storyboard presentation, differ when it's in its final stages?
I can speak to that. Yeah, there's a great deal of iteration that goes on in the process, and I've had things I've turned in the past where they start off being this is what they wanted, they locked it in, and all of a sudden it changes by the end of it, and the result. And it's a collaborative process, so you have to go with the flow and accept it because that's what it's going to be. So it's fun with the idea, go with the idea of doing your best every day to the director and the art director, and from there, they take it where they want to do it as far as that goes.
There was a film I worked on where I was fortunate enough to work on set. It was about 10 years ago on Too Fast, Too Furious. And a good portion of the movie had to be rewritten. And they were just figuring it out while they were on set. And while they were porting cameras around Miami and stopping traffic. And they needed to get things done quickly, so they brought myself and another artist down for 3 months of storyboarding. It was the best job ever. But the thing is that while we were drawing, times in Hollywood, everything is done in committee, and so while they were shooting, they would stop shooting. Okay, let's redo this thing, And so we were drawing, and then just redrawing, and then redrawing the same stuff over and over and over again, and it's a little disheartening, but the creative process, you gotta kill your babies. You have to be able to not get connected, not get too attached to the efforts. I just kept in mind, this is a paying job. I mean, I'm doing what I love. I'm doing what comes naturally to me, and so you just suck it out.
Because to your point, when you're drawing, I believe that's like a free expression. So if you're just drawing and you're creating the illustrations that you're making, but a producer comes in and says, we have a budget. How does that process work when you then kind of have to limit your ideas on paper because of the money that's being put up for the project?
I think for that it's all comes down to adaptability and being able to scale like your project depending on the project's budget. You can plan out a really elaborate sequence, but then if it's just not in the budget, you have to, he says you have to cut some of your babies and readapt it, or just think simpler, like keep it simple.
I can add to that. So one of the things I kind of like to teach people that are working under me is this is a client, they're paying for it, and so you might know better how things look as an artist, but at the end they're writing a check, give them what they want, and you just got to be able to separate that. And that's where a lot of us, I'm sure all of you guys have personal projects you do on the side, because that's where we get to do what we want to do.
I got something to add to that previous question, just more about you, because we're talking more about the film, game, and television industry, but you working in comics. How exactly does the concept process work for you, especially being independent?
For me, it works where everything comes up with a plan. You should not start just drawing a comic or drawing a project because it normally doesn't come out right. Yes, it worked for Stan and Jack, but you have to realize that was back in the silver and gold major comics. People now, and even in film, you're going to have a storyboard, and it has to be adaptable, and all that comes from a script. So I've come up with a concept of how to do it, and I'm glad you asked. I don't know how to do it, and I'll be making YouTube videos explaining that concept shortly in the next few months. But if you have a good plan at the beginning, in fact, the idea we came up with is, if you see how YouTube has small snippets of what the episode is about. First of all, they have the overall concept of what the show or the television show or project is about. Then each individual episode has its own small description. If you take that aspect into drawing a comic or a short film or a film series, you will now have a plan, and then you can start building from that. Otherwise, you're going to waste a lot of time, effort, money, and concept and development to things that may not ever be produced.
For projects like video games, those are very graphic. And I believe that those are very popular because there's like a lot of video game festivals that go on now. And like for animation for those, do those differ heavily in video games versus, let's say, television or film?
Yeah, in my experience, like having started off working in TV shows, you're more of an actor because you're animating an entire scene, and so you have to get all these emotions across. Whereas when you're doing a video game, you have a character that runs, jumps, ducks, throws something, kicks, punches, and so you have to create just these tiny little kind of loops of action, and so you don't really get to put in the emotion and the acting in those characters as much as you would if you're working with a storyline.
And adding on to something like that, because I worked in the cartoon industry and the games industry. So he is correct as far as you have a little bit more freedom of expression as an animator with cartoons and everything like that, because that character is basically you when you're animating. When you do get the video games, yeah, you do have a standard run pose, attack pose, or something like that. But sometimes they do have things like little cinematic cutscenes and things like that, where an animator does have the ability to flex their muscle or put their take on that character. Now, you did say something contributing to the violence, or I apologize. The second half of that question? Or?
No, I was just saying, I know video games are more popular now, and they're not necessarily, I mean, they're in sequence, but they don't necessarily have to be told in the same story like you would see a movie. So I was just asking, does it differ drawing for?
Actually, the lines are beginning to blur between games, yeah, and films. We are starting to handle it the same exact way that films get shot. For example, a really good example of that is the recent God of War game that came out. That game was made the way a film was made. The entire game was, the story was told during a really, really long one-shot camera move. So the entire game that you play, it never goes to a cutscene. You automatically start in the film, you play the game, and then it just goes right into the next cutscene. And so there's never a break in between. It is exactly the way the film is shot. They use the same techniques, they use the same type of camera equipment. They have the same, I know you guys probably seen it on YouTube, like the body suits with the little balls on it so they can track your face and movements. It's the same exact thing that you see in films in like Lord of the Rings and Matrix and all that stuff. The same techniques, the same sound stage. Studios are just as big. In fact, I believe at the moment, video game industry is bigger than the film industry right now.
So with that, because a lot of, well, at least for film, everybody wants the explosion. They want the big type of visual effects. Do you see that taking place, or do you see one taking place over the other, visual effects over taking just, pen to paper storyboard drawing or art?
I think the word for that is spectacle. Like spectacle through the effects or explosions and just all sorts of special effects. They draw in the crowds, but nothing can replace like story or the character interplay. But there's so much overlap now between what's presented in games and movies and series, because they're all trying to tell a story, and you can't tell a story without proper characters. And it seems like spectacle will be great for drawing in the crowds, but it's without the tie to characters, it's just empty. Right, it all is supposed to search.
I'm gonna piggyback, I was gonna piggyback on him, but piggyback on that one. I think what we, as illustrators and creatives, visual creatives in this, we've seen good projects and we've seen bad projects. And we understand what makes a good project and understand what makes a bad project, just from experience. And like what you said about the spectacle, you'll notice that there are some films that are just, you can tell that it's just a series of action scenes, and let's just throw some story in between to make them kind of sort of fit. And then there's stories that are just, okay, this is a story, and the action happens on purpose for a reason. The sex happens on purpose for a reason. The violence happens on purpose for a reason. So we, and for storyboarding, at times you might have to give that consultant and say, hey, your plot really does, your action doesn't really push the plot. Or you know, so we have to come from that aspect. And then also understanding that what it was told to me, this is from my professional life, this is totally different than this creative stuff. I've always been told it's the boss's barbecue. If it tastes like crap, it's on him. So you have to realize if you're contracted to do a work, he said, do what they ask you to do, offer your opinion, but don't take it personal if they say no, and realize that you have your own personal project to make wonderful and make great. And that's the story that you want to tell. You take all these little nuances, and then you come up with a great personal project, a great demo reel, a great comic, a great film, indie film of your own that people can enjoy because they see your passion and the lessons that you learn off of other people's, but it's really there.
And to that point, he's right. Our job is to sell the sizzle. So ultimately, it boils down to some old terminology that one of my art directors told me. What I need you to do now at this point is you've got the concept in hand. I want you to finish it and make sure that it's producible and people see it and love it based on what you're going to add to it. So playing with all those different things as far as games and comics goes and even into movies, that gap is starting to integrate more. You start to see some of the same effects that you use for video games being applied to comics. And that's a good thing for artists to be able to adapt and express themselves like that.
So it sounds like there's just going to be more of a high demand for storyboarding and visual design artists.
Definitely.
Hope so.
Yeah, doing traditional art, storyboarding and stuff like that and everything, that's never going to go away in our field. It is like one of the cheapest forms and quickest way to get an idea out for any director or art director or whoever is making whatever project. Storyboards are going to be here to stay. So it doesn't matter if you do it digitally, on a napkin, on a dry erase board, storyboards, traditional sketching, all of that stuff. It goes into the final product or whatever. Like I do digital painting and stuff on a computer only because it's fast. I know how to paint in oils and acrylics and even animate traditionally by hand in 2D. That, in fact, that was like one of my passions. I love it. It's just that it takes a long time to do, and we're in an industry where they want everything yesterday.
So do you need to be updated on the latest software and technology? Like it's no more, like I said, pen to paper, or is it you now doing your artwork on the computer and having to send those samples?
We're all jumping.
I'm based in LA and just doing some of the work in New York. I've found that some of the artists, if you can command like your clients, it's staying up to date with current software is super important. But at the same time, some of the best artists, they use what they know best. And sometimes that software, just a couple generations ago, it's all dependent on the artist and what the client needs.
It is.
I found.
But to add to that is also, I mean, one of my mantras is believe in your ability to adapt. And that means that as the software gets older, I mean, the average lifetime now for an artist to build in the industry sustainably is like 5 years. And because the software is constantly changing and growing, at least in my industry as far as 3D graphics goes.
Yeah.
And if you're not adapting to the latest software, you're aging out really, really quick. So yeah, I mean, it's daunting, but at the same time, everything builds upon itself. So eventually what you can find is you'll see that there's a lot of similarity in software changes. And what I like to do is take some of the things I've learned in the past and apply it to current software.
I'm gonna be real quick on it. It's what we see. I see a lot of times is people use the wrong software for the right job, or the right software for the wrong job. Illustrator does one thing. Photoshop does something else. Clip Studio does something else. I just heard about Storyboard Pro, that does something else. And you should be able to use all these in tandem and be able to make them work in concert. Unfortunately, people keep saying, I'll just use Photoshop. And you can tell a lot of times when they just use Photoshop because it looks that way. It looks like it misses something that's human. It misses something that's needed. So I always tell people, learn as many software projects as you can. I was just talking to Mr. Simon in the back. I was always told, suck it up, buttercup. If you can't pick it up, get on these YouTube videos, continue to learn. I spend more time doing research development and watching how-to YouTube videos than I watch cat videos and people fighting and all that.
That's true. When I'm at home, I work on my main computer. It's a very large computer. It's got a Cintiq, which is a large screen that I draw onto, and it's an interface between my hand, which is drawing by hand, and the actual computer. But when I'm on set, I can't bring that. And I'm following the director around, and he's giving me notes, and I've got to be able to sketch on the spot. But I've also got to be able to quickly email that out to the crew, to the distribution list. I use a program called Procreate on my iPad. It's very cheap. The iPad is, whatever it is, but the software is only $10, and because of that, I must have sold Apple 3 iPad Pros and three programs of Procreate. There's a director that I've worked with. I'm spacing out on his name right now. He's directed Underworld.
Yeah.
Anyway, he started off as a storyboard artist. Len Wiseman, thank you. So he started off as a storyboard artist. So he and I were just talking shop. And he was really like it, and I was like, wait a minute, what is that you got there? And so it's an iPad. He said, no, the software. He said, it's Procreate. I was like, how much was that? So it was $9.99. $9.99? So the next day, he went out to the Apple store in Lenox Mall and bought an iPad. And he emailed me. He said, look, I got it. So technology is it's not everything, but it is very useful keeping up with the latest, and it helps me with my efficiency, and my delivery time is shortened because of it.
Okay. So I'm guessing a lot of you, everyone here has shoes on, and so when you see a new pair of shoes come out, and you're like, wow, they're still just shoes. God, I gotta have those shoes. I want those shoes. Well, it does creative, folks. I'll be working in one program, and I'll know it really well, doing animation, and then along comes another one. And I'm like, I don't want to learn that. But man, that's awesome. That does all these different things I couldn't do before. And so I think as creatives, we probably all are like, that's the new cool, fun thing to do, that new thing we couldn't do before that we always wanted to do. So I don't think it's a big deal for us to kind of want to dive into new and exciting tools. The Procreate, I mean, that's huge. You go on Instagram, and all the artists that I follow now are all using that. And so, while it sounds like a lot to keep up with the new technology, I think it's more so like it's the new shoes for us.
Then I get it.
So the thing I like to stress that's important is that all of the answers that was given up here is 100% correct. And you can throw that right out the window, because at any point some director could come along. Like one time I was doing something for like Netflix, and I'm asking him, what are you guys working in? How do you want it or whatever? And I don't care if you send it to me on the back of the 10 Commandments. Just get it over here. You know what I mean? So it could be very true what they're saying in their field, but it all depends on what project you're on, who you're working with, what they're working with. So you want to, as an artist, you want to have to research that company or that client and see what they're using, what they're working with or whatever, because that will determine if you'll get the job, if you'll work well in that field. Exactly what do you have to do for them, because some directors, like, I don't care if you paint it by hand or do it. There's still a character designer, storyboard artist in Industrial Light and Magic who he still does his to this day, since the first Star Wars movie. Still does all his storyboards and character design by pen and pencil. He has not done any digital stuff at all. And that comes from being really, really good at your craft. All of us as artists, like you can throw all of this digital stuff away and we can still survive because we put in that time as an artist, as a creative person, that passion to do that. And that shows in the program that you learn and everything like that. So yeah, programs are gonna change or whatever like that, but you as an artist, you putting in that hard work, you knowing your traditional foundation skills and everything, that is always gonna show through, and somebody's gonna see that no matter how many programs that you use. There's even some guys in my field of video games, there's like, I can show you to use any program in 3 months. I can teach you how we use it in 3 months. So you don't need to know how to do that, but you do need to know about color theory. You do need to know about perspective, anatomy, just knowledge of the world itself, period, in order to be a creative person here.
That was great insight. I am going to open up the panel and open up the floor to the panel for anybody who has questions. Two people.
Brian, you sent a little blurb which was like kind of in passing. What is it?
Thanks for co-creating this conference, by the way. You said just something, a little statement in passing, which was the gaming industry is recession-proof. What is it? Can you elaborate on that briefly and what that exactly means for the video game industry?
Video games bring in more money than the entire movie industry. So it's too big to fail. Literally, it's the video game. I mean, anybody else can go in on that. I'm actually not in the video game industry, but I do know that it is recession-proof.
Yeah, not just the movie industry, but the combined movie industry, sports industry, television industry, combined, they still don't match the video game industry. They got money.
I'd say look at the demographic of who uses video games. Because you got anywhere from toddlers to people who are in their 80s. So the demographic is so big and it's on multiple platforms.
Yeah, and that's the reason why we've also included this panel, because it's very much a part of the entertainment industry. I think people forget, they just think it's about the filmmaking and the music industry, but gaming is a very integral part, and there is a budget out there. And once again, if you caught the wonderful Linda Chapman yesterday, she spoke about financing and all the different areas of which there is money here in Georgia to be distributed in this area. So this was a very important part for us to include in the panel.
Great question, Lindsay.
So I heard a lot of storyboarding, and even when I was thinking about what to do, because I'm a storyteller, and I love the medium. Like when you mentioned God of War, I was like, yes, I love that. The way that it did, I had to fight that first boss, and it happened so seamlessly, it blew me out of my face. I was like, I have to fight this guy. So, but when it comes to that, I don't have the same training as, like, say, a storyboard artist. I'm a writer, and I love looking at games being over like the really nitty-gritty how to create that world and writing it and creating character models like Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild. Brilliantly done, beautifully done, great game, immersive. So I kind of want to know, like, even though it's not a screenwriter's panel, how does like a writer get into that? Do I need to focus on like drawing and kind of like building that world and that capacity, or is there space for me, especially in the video game industry, to use my talent that way?
I think that's an awesome question, especially when it comes into me being as a comic book artist. Not every script is visual, and not every writer writes visually. So there are some scripts that are like you can have a example is I'd be having a conversation like this on the panel. It'd be very boring to watch if you're not involved in the content. It'd be very boring to watch because it's going to be head, face, maybe some different angles. But if you change that and you start adding in elements of what we're talking, like you talk about God of War, cutting to a scene of God of War and showing it now it's becoming visual. Now you're immersing yourself into it. So from a writer, I would suggest if you start writing from that aspect, or get with an artist who understands you, that you connect with as a writer, so they can read your information, and in your second client meeting, after they come back, your second meeting you have with them, take their advice, because you're looking at them to take your prose and make it visual. Take their advice, and they might tell you, hey, you might want to change your pacing here, or you might want to move this part of the story somewhere else, because visually it will tell a better story. And like it was said up here, don't be afraid to sacrifice your babies, because until it's a full-grown adult, which is your final project, it's just in development.
As far as writing goes, if we're talking about trying to write for a video game, I think, first of all, I think writing is the same in almost any industry. Writing is writing. You want to get better at writing? Write. Read more too, especially the specific type of writing that you want to do. You know, fantasy, romantic stuff. Read that stuff. Do your own writings, even if it's just for yourself. You don't necessarily have to do it for clients, but write stories. Everyone wants to hear stories, period. And none of what we do is going to make that better if your story is terrible. Also, you might want to talk to Mark and Jeannie, because they are very good at how you would take writing and translate it into storyboards or information like that. You know them. There they go. Yeah, they're really really good at that. You also want to. The only thing that changes as far as writing goes in different industries, like with television and film and video games, it's just the format that it's put in. You can write like a graphic novel, but if you're going to take it to films, take a book to film, then you need to learn how to just write a screenplay. You know, things like that. So again, that goes back to researching exactly what it is that you want to, the field that you want to work in, so you know how to format your writing that way. But nothing is going to make up for a bad or good story. That comes from you, period, and you have to just start there. That's your foundation.
Yeah, one thing. For those of you who are on a budget and are writing, and you have screenplay, one good resource is Studio Binder, and if you want to look that up, it's just a storyboarding resource for non-storyboard artists.
Well, let's give it up for our lovely panel as they
Yeah, one more.
Oh, one more question. We can even go for one more.
Okay, we don't want to.
Any more questions?
Gentlemen back there.
How y'all doing? Thank y'all for the information as well. I'm an illustrator. I've been doing it as a hobby for my entire life. And I would like to know, I want to make this transition. You know, even I know yesterday we talked a lot about internship, being a student, kind of telling someone, how does somebody like myself, who as an illustrator, I can draw you sitting there right now, make the transition to be able to, you know, become someone like yourself in the future?
I'll tell you what I did. I was working as a professional illustrator. I wanted to get into storyboarding, so I decided I was going to make a storyboard. So what I did was I took a Huggies commercial. This was back in the day when we had VCRs, and I would record the commercial, and I drew the shots. And I used that as my first sample. I put that on my website. And that got me work as a commercial storyboard artist. And one of the things that I was told by my mentor, I got a storyboard mentor, who was the first person to bring me into the professional storyboarding arena, was to study editing as much as I could by watching videos. I watched all kinds of DVDs back then. I would watch with the sound turned off so I could learn the visual language and how editing affects everything. Turn off this. If you can tell a good story without dialogue, then you've done a good job. So that's what I wanted to learn everything. So it was a gradual process. My first sample turned into my second sample, etc. I started doing music videos, but it didn't translate until quite a few years later. So I mean, there's no one way to do it, but if you put your energy into something, it will eventually lead to something that you're more interested in doing. That's what I mean.
Yeah, I think all of us got something.
Yeah, I think, yeah, one thing I recommend if somebody wants to, get into illustration specifically is it's all about connections.
Yeah.
You have to know people, and whether it's, my Instagram is all about my art. I don't put pictures of my dogs and my wife, my dog and my wife on there, vacation stuff. It's strictly art, and through that I've gotten, asked to be a guest at, comic conventions and be in your portfolio. And I host a monthly comic and animation artist meetup in Atlanta, and it's mostly a bunch of kids that are either in SCAD, going to SCAD, or just finished SCAD. But and they're all there to just kind of find out, like, how do I meet other people, and eventually that becomes friendships. And there's been people that have come to me and said, hey, do you want to work on this comic book? And I'm like, I don't have time, and that's not my style, but I know like 5 people in my meetup, and I can contact those guys. So there's meeting people constantly, and it doesn't have to be like, hey, here's my card, here's my resume. It's just making friends. That's all it is. I mean, Brian and I we ended up working together, and it was just, we just instantly clicked, and he invited me to come do this today. So.
Oh, I got one. The thing that I would say is, first of all, figure out where or who you want to illustrate for. Because illustrating for a movie, like making movie posters, versus illustrating for children's books. It's 2 different industries, 2 different ways to network, 2 different just ways to get your stuff out there. So research exactly where you want to go. Like I was talking to her, once I saw it play God of War, like I didn't actually play it. I just saw someone else started out for the first few minutes, and I never played it anymore. I went and I researched the entire company, every artist, every intern, the HR manager, and it's all of that. And luckily enough, social media has done a great job of making it easy for me to find these people and contact them myself. Yeah, LinkedIn. So make sure that you are very courteous and professional out there. Contact the people that work in that field themselves. Get in touch with them. Send them links to your website, portfolio, artwork, all of that stuff. Stay in constant contact. Nothing is going to beat you going and meeting these people in person. My wife can tell you this. I got turned down 362 times. I was, I was on the verge of, and before I went out to the Game Developers Conference and met the people that I had been emailing for 3 years, no response. I met them in one day, and they're like, oh yeah, come on, here you go. Wait, what? So definitely research. Find the people that you want to work with, that you want to work for. Find the people who are your competition too. That is very, very important, because you're going to have to be as good as they are or better in order to compete in that field. Us as artists, we have other artists that we admire. That I love this guy. I love to work on Star Wars with this stuff. I love to do this. And I was like, yeah, I would too, but you know that guy he's got your spot at Star Wars. That's who you have to fight to get on there. So you better be as good as him. As like, for me, my motivation was that Cat Williams, the tiger in the zoo scenario. I think y'all heard of that. You got to be ready to show them that you're not BSing. So you sat there and you said, I'm an illustrator. Anybody in here can easily say, show me. You're not ready. So make sure you practice that craft. Stay in contact with people, network. You just research where you want to go and go for it. Don't let anything stop you. Don't count the emails. I counted the emails just in case. It's 362 no's, and I got 1 yes. And Yeah, that's, and all of a sudden, 362. Yeah, it's just like, yeah.
Some of that perspective. No, I guess.
Thank y'all. Oh, we had one more question, gentleman in the orange hat.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. How you guys doing today? I wanted to touch up on a question going back to when you were talking about pleasing the clientele before anything else, even your own personal satisfaction as an artist. So as a multi-dimensional artist, I've experienced this contrast in a number of ways, but I mainly see it apparent in music. I would be recording, a mixing engineer. Do you ever feel like when a client or anyone really, could be another artist you're collaborating with, when they want to create something that doesn't resonate with you, or you feel like it's not going to produce as well, or it's just not flowing, but you're getting paid to do it, do you feel that contrast pulling you towards don't really want to do this, or you kind of just like, nah, make money, it doesn't matter? Because I feel like at the end of the day, but whether the quality is good, but that doesn't even resonate with you as an artist, your style, you don't have the pride in it. Do you feel like it's not worth making, or it's the bucks come before anything?
Well, I'll say the bucks come before anything, first. When it comes to the professional life and you have certain standards to maintain, the first thing we do is maintain a gracious attitude towards the people you're working with. And make sure that you're letting them know that, okay, you can do this, but this is something else you want to add to it. If they object to that, that's fine. You're on their payroll, you do what they're asking you to do. Then keep that for yourself so you can build your own portfolio up and give that offering that would be my best advice. That's what I do.
Yeah, and just to touch up more on it, it's the art of churning and burning, which is for the projects you don't feel totally passionate about. It's also to help like build out your portfolio.
Right.
So as much work as you can take is just take it, especially if it pays, because then that bread is.
Yeah, it's hard.
But I mean, if they pay, it's also they get total command of the project, and the ideas that you may bring to it that don't get used, that's your back pocket for future projects or similar work. But there's always value in like any project.
I definitely feel that. In my experiences, I've been using that same method, not putting everything in my back pocket, because I make my own personal projects every day. I live art is my life, so I definitely feel that. But for me, it was just kind of like the feeling of something I'm not really proud of, or I don't really feel like resonates with who I am as an artist, or even my work. It could be like that one bad egg out of the bunch, and it's like, yeah, you saw that? I did that. For a client, that kind of feeling.
I think that this is a very good question, and it comes down to a business question.
Right.
And networking. If I network with these men on this stage here, and I know that I have a very Marvel Comics looking style, and he has a very Nickelodeon or Disney Don Bluth looking style, and the client wants a Don Bluth looking style. I'm like, well, ethically, yeah, I could change up my style, but I'm working on a project now, and as an artist, for me at times it's hard to switch from one style to the other, because when you go back to your original project, you're still carrying some of those artifacts, and it doesn't look the same. So what I may do is say, hey man, I got this gig, do you want it?
That is how it always works.
Okay, and then he takes it. Now, gentleman agreement between us is we can either hey man, I'm gonna slide you a few dollars on it, finder's fee, or I got you the next one. Most of the time it's I got you on the next one because I need all the money myself. Right. So, and that's what's ethical, and when you have relationships, like my man Mr. Wheeler back there, I have a relationship with him. I try to help him out as much as possible. And a lot of our agreements are gentleman contracts, because that's how we need to act, especially on this level. And as things grow, when he blows up, I'm gonna blow up. When I blow up, he's gonna blow up. So, and I would hope to have that relationship with the men on this panel here. If I find those projects, like when I sit up here, if I can't do it, I know somebody that can. And I know that person, just the man that I am, they'll come back to me and say, well, DL can, he's fast, he can get that, he can knock that out. He has all the resources in the studio to knock it out. Let me slide that towards him. So I would say start thinking that direction, because in networking, you never know where things will be.
We have one more question, or did you want to answer?
Oh yeah, I want it. And just to piggyback off of everybody else, but still add a little bit onto that, is as artists, you're gonna hear this a lot, is you as an artist have to take your ego out of it, okay?
Yes.
This is their project, their baby, this is their vision. They hired you because you are good at your craft to help them get their vision out. And it's sometimes, especially because that ego and that passion is what drove you to be as good as you are, sometimes you have to train yourself to not listen to that, let it go, do what they need you to do. As a concept designer, I do hundreds of drawings a day that they look like toddler, and I would stick that on my refrigerator. And then I may do 1 or 2 paintings that look very, 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 very good. But at the end of the day, I have to realize, okay, I know this sucks by my standard as an artist, but it's attached to the name Marvel. That's what's gonna get me my next job. So it's about the client. That's what's also the next clients that you get hired on, they're gonna be like, is he good to work with? They're not gonna say, oh, does he know how to paint colors, or they're not gonna look at that. They're looking at your reputation. Did the person before you had a good experience working with you? Did you deliver what they needed, no matter how it looked? Keep that in mind.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Our last question.
My question is for the gaming. When working, if you get brought on a DLC, how does that differ from if you're a pickup artist for a continuous series on comic books?
I can answer that. It's no different if you get brought onto any project that already has an established art style or following or anything like that. If you do a DLC, you're going to get the same type of training that you would have gotten if you got brought on before the project even started. What they do is they find artists that they think would be easy to just put you into their pipeline. They'll look at it and go, okay, this artwork looks like our artwork, so that means it'll take a lot less time to train him to get up to speed with us. So even if it's DLC, if it's just a cover art, whatever it is, jump in it and take it. Don't worry about why they hired you or what's it for, whatever like that. Go in like it's a fresh new project every single time. Give them that. Yeah.
I'd also say, again, it's a business question. Look at your contract. If your contract says work for hire, that's what it means.
Yep.
You're working for hire. You have no right to that. If your contract says you'll get some type of royalty, then it's your responsibility to keep up with that royalty. They're not going to hunt you down and pay you your money. So I prefer work for hire because it's just easier and it's their job, and it's, once I'm done with it, I'm done with it. But I always suggest, try to stress to people, there is a business to this, and then there is an art to this. And we have to realize I spend more time in studio doing business than I do art. And I'm drained after my work day, after going to the gym, and then after doing the business of just my own personal comic. And then I get maybe about an hour or 2 to draw, which turns into 4 or 5 hours. And then I'm going to bed at 3 in the morning to get back up at 5.
Yeah, and the way in which Brian and I work, I do all the business, I do all the contracts, I do all the invoicing, I do all the liaison, and it frees Brian up to be creative, completely creative. I will check the work before it goes out to make sure that there's no errors or there's continuity issues, and it will go back to him.
There never any
There's errors sometimes. So that's how we work together. So it raises our quality of excellence out there. When people come and work with us, they know, oh yeah, you go through his rep, Audrey. Oh, okay, that's interesting. Storyboard artist with a rep. But, it works, and that's how it frees Brian up to be as creative and innovative with the work that he's doing. So
they need some wives.
Yeah, find you an Audrey.
Anybody need a rap?
So when I was a young artist, going through my different experiences coming up and training and learning and growing, I had an opportunity to work with a major corporation that relocated me out to Los Angeles. And during that first summer, as an intern, for 2 months I was an intern. And I just, sorry? No. Oh, I didn't mention it was Disney, sorry. It was Walt Disney Company for the consumer products group, and they raised me to a certain standard. But in particular, there was a certain gentleman that raised the standard for me. And I have strived to meet that standard ever since those days. And that man is here today, Dan Haskett. Please stand up for him. He's all the way out from Los Angeles. And I'm so honored to have you. Thank you.
Dan.
Have a few. Would you have a few? I don't mean to put you on the spot, Dan. But
Yes, he does. Yeah, he does. Yes, he does.
I met this man. I was 22. Or no, I was 23 years old. And the guy that was going to be hiring me brought me to his house and introduced me to him. And my boss was heavily inspired by this man, and I was heavily inspired by my boss. So in tandem, you have affected my career in such a way I can't begin to tell you. If you wanted to, I mean, I can't believe he's here right now. Like, you don't even understand. I'm geeking out every time I talk to him. If you have a few words.
Thank you so very much for this. And I had no idea that I had the effect on you that I did, but I'm very, very glad that I did, because I love working with, I love mentoring young people. And it's so nice to hear when someone realizes that I'm trying to do something good for them and to raise overall standards of this meeting. So, thank you.
What's that? I'm beginning to claim.
It's all right. It's all right.
Now I moved out here in 2004, and in the group that I worked with when I worked for Cartoon Network, his name was being called up all the time. Like, even people you've never met talk about you. And we trade Xerox copies. Remember Xerox? We had booklets of Xerox copies with bulldog clips. Yeah, we copy those and distribute them, and like this is. I mean, if you could name some of the projects that you've worked on in the past and presently, give everyone a context of the depth of your work.
Oh my goodness. Well, I started in the business in 1969. I was out of high school. So last year was my 50th anniversary. In that time, I've been in an awful lot of places, including Disney, of course, and Cartoon Network. I'm at Warner Brothers right now, reviving older characters like Looney Tunes and Tom and Jerry and Scooby-Doo and that kind of thing. Let's see, in about 2 weeks, I'm going to be switching over as an animator on Space Jam 2. And before that, among many other things, I also designed Ariel, the Little Mermaid. Got a lot of stuff.
I forgot about that.
I'd just like to say, that's why it's so important for you guys to be networking, talking to everyone, because you just don't know when you're in the presence of greatness.
Great.
He sits over there so quiet, so unassuming, but when you know that this man is responsible for billions of dollars, billions, even more than billions, across the world. This is just not domestically here in America. So please make sure that you use every opportunity you can to network, and you must stay for this evening. So for the long haul, from 6 to 8, we have the networking time that you can just do your thing. So, yes.
She's quite right, and most of my career has been freelance. I've freelanced for 40 years, which means that I did an awful lot of networking, deliberately and mainly off the cuff, really. Just meeting people that I would work with on a daily basis, or they would introduce me to somebody else if they liked my work, and say, oh, there's this guy that does such and such and such. And so, yes, what is quite right. Networking is key to this meeting, to this business. Thank you.
Thank you.